I never thought one night could change the way I look at people forever. It started like any other evening, me sitting in my small apartment, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Most of them were with Jason, the guy I used to call my best friend. We'd known each other since middle school, went through everything together, first girlfriends, football games, late night parties. If there was one person I thought I could trust with my life, it was him. But that night, while staring at our smiling faces frozen in time, something inside me twisted. I remembered the way he looked at me a few weeks ago, the way his eyes flickered when I asked him about the missing money. He swore he had nothing to do with it, swore on his life. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to accept it. I decided to take a walk, clear my head. The city streets were quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. As I passed the corner store, I saw Jason's car parked a block away. It was strange, he never came around this part of town at night. Curiosity got the better of me, so I followed the faint sound of voices, drifting from the alley behind the store. That's when I heard my name. My stomach dropped. I froze in the shadows, listening. Jason was talking to someone I didn't recognize, a man with a rough, gravelly voice. "Don't worry about him," Jason said. "He's too naive to figure it out. By the time he realizes, we'll be long gone with the cash." My chest tightened. My so-called best friend wasn't just lying. He was planning something bigger, something that involved me. I wanted to step out to confront him right there, but my legs wouldn't move. The man chuckled, a dark, unsettling sound. "And if he does figure it out?" the stranger asked. Jason's reply cut deeper than any knife. "Then he won't be around to tell anyone." My hands trembled as the reality sank in. The guy I trusted with everything had just signed my death sentence. That's when Jason's head turned slightly, as if he sensed someone nearby. His eyes scanned the alley, inching closer to where I was hidden. My breath caught in my throat. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just betrayed, I was being hunted. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, forcing myself not to make a sound. Jason's footsteps echoed as he walked toward my hiding spot, his shadow stretching across the ground like some predator closing in. For a second, I thought it was over, that he'd spot me and finish what he'd started behind my back. But just before his eyes reached me, the stranger called out, "Leave it, man. No one's here. Let's go." Jason hesitated, his gaze lingering on the darkness where I stood frozen. Then, with a slow nod, he turned back. I waited until their voices faded down the alley before I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. I stumbled back to my apartment, my head spinning. Every memory with Jason replayed in my mind, but now twisted, poisoned. That time he borrowed money and never paid me back. That time he, accidentally, lost my watch. The strange way he kept asking about how much I had saved for college. Suddenly, it all made sense. He'd been playing me for years, and I'd been too blind to see it. But what terrified me most wasn't the betrayal. It was his words. "He won't be around to tell anyone." He wasn't just stealing from me, he was ready to get rid of me if I stood in his way. I barely slept that night, jumping at every sound outside my window. By morning, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to the cops, not yet. Jason knew how to talk his way out of anything, and without proof, it'd be my word against his. No, I needed something solid, evidence that showed exactly what he was planning. So that night, I followed him again. I trailed his car through the city until he pulled into an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. From the broken windows and rusted gates, it looked abandoned, but when I crept closer, I saw dim lights glowing inside. I slipped through a side entrance and crouched behind a stack of crates. Jason stood there with the same man from before, along with two others I didn't recognize. On the table in front of them was a duffel bag. Jason unzipped it, and my stomach flipped when I saw stacks of cash spilling out. 50 grand, Jason said proudly. "And there's more coming once we finish the job." The stranger leaned in. "And what about your buddy? You sure he won't mess things up?" Jason smirked, a coldness in his expression I'd never seen before. "Don't worry, I've already got a plan for him. By the end of this week, he's done." The room erupted in laughter. My chest tightened, and for the first time in my life, I felt real fear. Fear that I might not live to see another week. But instead of running, I pulled out my phone, hit record, and whispered to myself, "Jason, you just made your last mistake." I watched the footage on my phone with my thumb shaking so hard the video blurred. Jason's face, lit by that filthy warehouse light, looked nothing like the kid I grew up with. He was smug, ruthless, someone forged from greed. The men laughed, counted cash, and talked about jobs I didn't want to imagine. I had everything I needed: names, faces, plans, proof that my brother was planning to remove me from the equation. For a second, I thought about running to the police. but every instinct screamed no. If these guys were willing to talk about killing me, what would they do if they knew I went to law enforcement? I needed allies, real ones, and I needed a way to flip this so I wasn't the one sitting in a cell telling a story no one would believe. I went home and didn't sleep. Dawn crawled in and the apartment felt like a trap. I called my sister, my only family who didn't live in town, and pushed the idea of coming over for the weekend, inventing some reason. Then I called an old coworker with a journalism internship at a local outlet, someone I trusted a little more than the rest. I didn't tell him everything, just dropped the idea of a tip, shady warehouse, late night gatherings, a man named Jason. He agreed to listen but warned me, if I wanted to go public, I needed airtight proof. The video would help, but I needed something more concrete. That night, I followed Jason again, but smarter. I kept to the shadows, moved slower, and this time I brought a small recorder and a spare battery. He drove to the very same warehouse. Only, before he got out, he received a call. I ducked behind a dumpster and watched, listening to snippets as the call went through, numbers, an address, a time. Then he hung up and strode inside with that same confidence. I slipped in through a broken side door and peered around a pallet. Conversation filled the room. They were planning a hit. Someone owed money and wouldn't pay, and they were going to make an example. I recorded names, dates, and a payment plan. This was it, real, undeniable evidence. Then, footsteps. Mine stopped. A shadow moved across the concrete between me and the exit. Someone else had come early. My heart slammed. I pressed myself flat behind crates of rusty metal, breath shallow. It was one of Jason's men, looking for something. He paused, sniffed the air, and muttered about rats, before moving on. I didn't move until his footsteps had faded entirely. When I finally crawled out into night air, the recorder warm in my palm, I felt two things, the heavy weight of fear, and a new pulse of resolve. I'd collected names, voices, dates, the kind of evidence that could ruin them, but I still needed someone outside this world to hold it without flinching. I couldn't do this alone. So I drove, every streetlight a threat, every car that passed a possible tale. I pulled into an all-night diner and sat with a coffee gone cold while my recorder hummed beside the cup. I contacted my journalism friend again and asked bluntly, "Are you sure you can keep me safe? I have proof of something big." His reply was a quiet, "Bring it to me in person tomorrow, and don't go anywhere alone." I left the diner with my shoulders tense and my phone buzzing with unanswered messages from Jason, simple images, casual texts. I deleted them without reading. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the weapon I now held. But I also knew the most dangerous thing in my pocket wasn't the evidence. It was the knowledge that Jason would notice if I suddenly vanished. And then the men in the warehouse would move faster than I could run. The next morning, Jason called me. His voice was casual, almost too casual. "Hey, man, haven't seen you much lately? Let's grab lunch." "Yeah," I agreed, though every instinct screamed at me to run. I needed to see his face again, to know if he suspected anything. We met at a busy diner downtown, people bustling in and out. The kind of place where I thought nothing bad could happen. Jason smiled wide when I walked in, clapping me on the back like always. But his eyes were cold, scanning me like he was looking for cracks in my armor. I forced a laugh, sat across from him, and tried to eat while my stomach twisted into knots. Halfway through, Jason leaned closer. His smile faded. "You've been quiet lately. Everything good?" I nodded too quickly, muttered something about stress at work. His gaze lingered on me for what felt like an eternity. Then he leaned back, grinning again. "Good, because you know I always got your back." The word stung like a knife. I knew what he'd said in that warehouse. I knew what having my back meant now. That night, I replayed the recording again and again, but each time my courage shrank. Going to the cops meant putting my life in their hands. And what if they didn't act fast enough? What if Jason found out first? Then came the message. A text from an unknown number. "We know what you're doing. Stop while you can." My blood turned to ice. Only a handful of people could have sent it, and Jason was at the top of the list. The walls of my apartment felt smaller with every passing minute. Every knock at the door, every footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. I pulled the curtains shut, barely slept, waiting for something, anything, to happen. I couldn't shake the thought. Jason wasn't just testing me anymore. He was hunting me. I never imagined that one choice could change everything. Standing there, looking at her, after all the lies, the betrayal, and the endless nights of doubt, I finally understood what real strength was. It wasn't about shouting, or trying to prove who was right. It was about walking away, even when every part of me wanted to hold on. I told her that I knew everything, that I had seen the messages, the late night calls she tried to hide, The little excuses that never added up. At first, she denied it, her voice trembling, eyes avoiding mine. But then the mask fell. She admitted it, without shame, without regret, almost like she had been waiting for me to catch her. That hurt more than the betrayal itself. For years, I gave her everything. My trust, my time, my dreams. And she treated it like it was nothing. She said she needed excitement, that I wasn't enough anymore. Those words cut through me like a knife. Not enough. Maybe that's what I had been afraid of all along. But here's the truth I finally realized. I was enough. I always was. I just gave my love to someone who didn't deserve it. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply told her it was over. For the first time in years, I felt free. Painful, yes, but free. I walked out of that door, leaving behind not just her, but the version of myself that accepted lies, that settled for less, that believed love meant sacrifice without limits. No more. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw a man who had been broken, but who chose to rebuild himself. A man who finally knew his worth. And maybe one day, I'll find someone who values honesty, loyalty, and love the way I do. But even if I don't, I know now that my peace, my self-respect, and my future mean more than holding on to someone who doesn't truly see me. This isn't a story about betrayal anymore. It's a story about becoming stronger, about letting go, about finally learning that sometimes the best way to win is to walk away.